When the war ended, everyone told him he was lucky. Lucky to be alive. Lucky to be coming home. Lucky to have survived when so many didn't. But luck is a strange word when you're standing on a quiet street, holding a duffel bag that feels heavier than it should, staring at a house that no longer feels like yours. Daniel Carter stepped off the bus just after sunrise. The town looked smaller than he remembered. Same diner on the corner, same barber shop with the striped pole, same flag waving gently above the post office. Everything was familiar, and yet nothing felt right. He had been gone for 3 years. 3 years of desert heat and freezing nights. 3 years of explosions that shook the ground and screams that echoed long after the gunfire stopped. He survived all of it. And now, standing on that sidewalk, Daniel realized he didn't know how to live anymore. The house was still there. White paint, blue door. The porch swing he had fixed with his father before deployment. For a moment, hope crept in. Maybe this part of his life had waited for him. But then he noticed the car in the driveway. It wasn't his. Inside, the house smelled different, a softer scent. Someone else's candles, someone else's life. The walls were decorated with new photos, his wife smiling beside another man, their arms wrapped around each other like they had built something solid and safe. She stood frozen when she saw him. "I didn't know when you'd be back," she said, her voice shaking. "They said your unit kept getting extended." Daniel nodded. He didn't trust his voice. "I waited," she continued, tears forming. "I really did. But after a year, then 2, I didn't know who you were anymore. I didn't know if you were coming home." He wanted to say he understood. He wanted to say he forgave her. But the truth sat heavy in his chest. The war had taken his marriage long before this moment. He left with his duffel bag an hour later. By noon, Daniel had lost his home. Finding work was harder than he expected. People thanked him for his service, shook his hand, and then gently explained they were looking for someone with different experience. Combat leadership didn't translate well into job interviews. Neither did the gaps in his resume filled with classified missions and places he couldn't talk about. At night, he slept in his truck. Sleep, when it came, was broken. Every loud sound pulled him back into the war. Fireworks sent his heart racing. A car backfiring made him duck without thinking. He learned which streets were quietest, which parking lots were safest, which nights were coldest. He stopped answering calls from his family. How do you explain that you survived hell, only to come home and feel more lost than ever? The lowest moment came quietly. One evening, Daniel sat in his truck outside a grocery store, watching people load their carts. Families laughed. Kids begged for candy. Life moved on without him. He felt invisible. That night, he stared at the steering wheel and wondered if surviving had been a mistake. But the next morning, something small changed everything. An older man approached his truck. Gray hair, worn jacket, a military posture that never fully fades. "You served?" the man asked, nodding at Daniel's unit patch still stitched on his bag. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Thought so," the man said. "I did too, different war." Same aftermath. They talked for an hour. Then too, the man told him about a local veterans center, a place Daniel had driven past a dozen times without noticing. He offered him coffee, no questions asked. That day Daniel walked through doors he didn't know he needed. There were others like him. Men and women who had survived firefights but struggled with grocery aisles. Who missed the structure of war and feared the chaos of peace. Who felt guilty for just being alive. For the first time since coming home, Daniel didn't feel alone. Healing wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. There were setbacks, nights when the memories came back strong. Days when anger bubbled up without warning. But there were also victories. A steady job, a small apartment. Group meetings where silence was just as respected as words. Volunteering with new veterans who reminded him of himself. Daniel learned that losing everything didn't mean he had lost his worth. One evening, months later, he stood outside the same diner from his first day back. The neon sign buzzed softly. He went inside, ordered coffee, and sat by the window. The town was still small, but for the first time it didn't feel empty. He had survived the war. And though it took time, patience, and help he once refused to accept, he was finally learning how to survive the peace, too. Thank you for watching. If you or someone you know is a veteran struggling, please know that help is available. Resources are linked in the description below. You are not alone.